Now, welcome to another edition of Battle of the Heroes and Villains, where this time we'll be taking a look at the results of the poll for Grand Moff Tarkin and comparing it to all the other characters we've done thus far, before I then read and respond to some of your comments. But before we get to all that, let me remind you, you can already nominate or vote for which character we do next. Just respond to my pinned comment below with the name of a character, or vote with a thumbs up if the one you'd like to see is already listed. Whatever comment gets the most thumbs up in the next 24 hours or so will be the winner. Alright, and now on to the results for this poll, where we'll see that 28% of people think Tarkin is an A tier character, 56% then said B, 14% gave him a C, which left 1% to give him a D, and a final 2% to give him an F. And when we do all the math here and consider A a score of 5 and F a score of 1, Grand Moff Tarkin ends up with a score of 4.07, which puts him into 14th place overall out of the 20 characters we've done thus far. And really here, I think these results are about what I expected and aren't too much of a surprise to anyone, I'd imagine. So let's now right away move on to your comments, but not without first once again saying thank you to everyone who votes, comments, and watches the videos. It's hard to believe we've already got ourselves a top 20, and I look forward to seeing how this list continues to shape up as it grows. Anyway, let's now kick this off with the top rated comment, which this time came to us from Alberson3, who said of Tarkin, "The only thing holding him back is his lack of screen time." And yeah, I can pretty much agree with that. I think if he survives A New Hope and is in the other original trilogy films, he'd be more well known, a more fleshed out character, and would have ranked higher on the list. But at least in the OT, there really wasn't much of a place or need for him beyond the first film, since The Empire Strikes Back is really the movie where Vader steps up and completely solidifies himself as one of the greatest villains of all time. We didn't need anyone else in that film to sort of rival him, though yeah, we do get a glimpse of Palpatine for the first time, and we also have Boba Fett in there as well. Also, I think it's rather fitting or necessary for the Rebellion to take out Tarkin and get that big win at the end of the first movie, to take out one of the main antagonists of the film. Not that taking out the Death Star alone wasn't a huge win, no matter who did or didn't die along with it. Still, taking out Tarkin feels like a fitting end to that first film, and you really feel like losing him is quite the loss for the Empire. And sure, Tarkin maybe could have and should have been a bigger part of the prequels than just being seen with Vader and Palpatine at the bitter end, but I at least do like seeing him be there, that he was a part of the Death Star's construction from the very beginning. Though there was maybe another problem with putting him in the prequels, which Grimzilla basically brings up in his comment here. Peter Cushing and his charisma is what makes this character. Without him, he's just a generic cold-hearted bad guy. C ranked up to a B solely for the actor. And don't get me wrong here, there are other places where Tarkin is great, and we'll discuss some of them in a bit. But yes, Peter Cushing brought something very special and unique to the character in A New Hope that is not going to be easy for anyone else to duplicate. As cool as it would have been to maybe see him or a younger version of him get a role of some sort or a part to play in the prequels, it would have been very hard for any actor to really capture what Cushing brought to the character. And when it comes to his appearance in Rogue One, which oddly not a lot of comments seem to bring up, it was one of those things where I think it would have been odd not to have him in there or in that story. And what we got, which was essentially another actor, Guy Henry, playing the part and then of course digitally altering the face, worked well enough but certainly was not great. In fact, it's kind of crazy how far that technology has come in the few short years since Rogue One came out, even though for some reason it felt like they struggled to nail younger Luke and Leia in The Rise of Skywalker, but whatever. Anyway, when it comes down to either not having Tarkin in Rogue One at all or taking what we got, I take what we got because it did work well enough and Tarkin really should have been in that movie. Alright, and next up here we have this comment from Jay Makowski who said, "Always intimidating. For instance, in Season 1 of Rebels, the Imperial occupation on Lothal started to feel like a joke, but once Tarkin showed up, the show immediately had more stakes. Without him, we would have never gotten other great Imperial officers like Grand Admiral Thrawn in the canon. He's what all Star Wars writers want in a villain." And I gotta say here, I had some serious doubts about Rebels until Tarkin showed up halfway through Season 1. Because outside of the Grand Inquisitor, the Empire was portrayed as a bunch of completely incompetent buffoons that couldn't do anything right. But once Tarkin showed up, the mood shifted, especially when he had the two Imperial officers, the aforementioned buffoons, decapitated for their failures. And though yes, overall I think Tarkin suffered a bit from the same problem Thrawn suffered from in Rebels, that it's really hard to capture the true nature of such a ruthless character in a kids show, they still did a relatively great job with Tarkin, And the show was much better off with him than it would have been without him. Plus, Steven Stanton does a phenomenal job with the voice of Tarkin. Okay, and next up here we have this comment from Cody Adams who said, I remember him meeting Anakin, and when I was young I just hated him. You could tell he was a bad dude, and they did a good job of showing that. They brought him back for Rogue One, and that actually looked amazing compared to Leia. Solid B. It'd be an A if he lived longer, lol. Then we had this comment from Bacon Dorito 19 who said, I hate Wilhoff. He was ungrateful for being rescued from the Citadel and prosecuted our girl Ahsoka with no real evidence. Also this one from Matthew Nunya who said, loved him in A New Hope and liked him in Rogue One, but they messed up putting him in Season 5 of the Clone Wars. I didn't like what the Clone Wars did with the character. And I'd have to say I really enjoyed seeing Tarkin in the Citadel arc, going along with what I was saying before about him being or not being in the prequels. I thought it was good to, in some respect, establish him during this time period, and help explain why or how he became such an important figure in the Empire later on. And when it comes to him being the one to prosecute Ahsoka, I'm kinda neutral on that. I get that they were trying to hammer home that he's this ruthless bad guy, but it may have been a bit more than was really needed. I would have preferred they found another way in the later seasons of the show to bring him in and show how he gains so much favor with Palpatine. Alright, and moving on now, we have this comment from Nodo Zakaradazi who said, he is one of the best villains in Star Wars because he is calm and intimidating, not sadist sociopath. Tarkin novel shows his backstory, and it is just amazing and shows very well how he became the man he was in A New Hope. Only weakness he had was his overconfidence, which led to his downfall. Very much agreed. The Tarkin novel is one of the best in the new canon and well worth the read. I highly recommend it. James Luceno just has a way of writing amazing villains and is responsible for probably my favorite book from the expanded universe, which is Plagueis. He also wrote Catalyst, which is basically a prequel to Rogue One, and makes that movie or the characters in it even better and is another highly recommended read from me. Okay, and next comment up here is this one from Big Boy who said, Grand Moff Tarkin is the Empire. He set the tone for who they are, ruthless, cutthroat, and total dominance. Then this comment from Balrogs ROP who said, Tarkin is a perfect representation of the Empire, calm, calculating, and cunning in every act of terror he commits. He doesn't have to pull out a lightsaber to assert his authority. His confidence and the way he puts Vader and Leia in their place is enough to tell the audience he's not one to be trifled with. Also had this comment from Kyle Carrasco who said, Tarkin's actions represent what the Empire is supposed to be depicted. A ruthless, fear-mongering regime. However, one of Tarkin's worst qualities was that he was always too cocky and sure of himself, which ultimately led to his downfall. He is an easy B for me. Also, we have this comment here from Resident TK007 who said, when A New Hope starts, Vader is presented as the most intimidating member of the Empire. We later see that he has a superior in Grand Moff Tarkin, and it is evident that both have a mutual respect for one another. That alone makes Tarkin an A-tier character. His appearance in Rogue One, Rebels, and his own novel helped to flesh out the character, but I still think he'd be an amazing character if he only appeared in A New Hope. Also, he's played by the great Peter Cushing, who instantly commands the screen when he's on. Then we also had this one from Revan03 who said, he was the only person besides the Emperor that could seemingly control Vader. That just goes to show that even Darth Vader himself held a high amount of respect for Tarkin, a feat that no one else can claim. Grand Moff Tarkin deserves a B. And I completely agree with everyone who says Tarkin is or represents perfectly what the Empire is. He is authoritarian without a hint of remorse or regret or guilt or sympathy. The guy blew up a planet or gave the order to blow it up like it was just another day. I mean, for every other Alderaanian who survived by not being on the planet, it was the worst day ever or imaginable for them. But for Tarkin, it was merely a Tuesday. And I do love his relationship with Vader, both what we see in A New Hope and the deeper look we get in the Tarkin novel, because though technically Tarkin does not outrank Vader, since Vader is not an actual part of the Empire's command structure or hierarchy, he respects Tarkin enough to listen to him and to obey his orders, and though that's impressive on its own in A New Hope, it becomes even more so when you see the way Vader is in The Empire Strikes Back, how no one else gets anywhere near that level of respect from him within the Empire, short of the Emperor himself. Alright, and now let's get to just a few final comments before wrapping this up, starting with this one from Master M who said, cunning, intimidating, and something about Peter Cushing's acting makes him a good villain in the Star Wars universe. Solid B for me. Then this one from Lamardi, who said, in a way he was even more cruel than Darth Vader himself. Unlike those new Disney villains, he wasn't a comic relief, but a threatening presence in the first movie. He wasn't afraid of Vader and even stopped him a couple times, and he blew up a freaking planet just to find the rebel base. Also, I think Peter Cushing had such a natural presence in that film, and a face you will always remember. Then this one from KitKat1133, who said, he's cool and does an effective job at presenting the Empire as scary, efficient, and ruthless, but he doesn't do much more than that. I wish we had more from him. Next then we have this one from Jezediah Springfield, who said, I recognized his foul stench as soon as I saw the poll, and yeah, a solid support character. We also had this one from Julia A, who said, you may fire when ready. Tarkin is one of those villains that is intimidating, but doesn't have enough screen time or other material, even with James Luceno's book Tarkin, to get fleshed out for the audience. When compared to Thrawn, who is high in command and not a Force user, the lack of character development is blatant. I like how the Clone Wars tried to use or show us more Tarkin, even so he is a B character. And finally here we have this comment from John de Benedict, who said, he may not have been the best Star Wars villain of all time, but he was one of the first and still one of the coldest, most intimidating figures in the Empire. I still love the quiet menace and authority that Peter Cushing brought to the role, and that has carried through in all his appearances beyond the first film in the Clone Wars and Rebels. Despite not making it past the first film, still a great antagonist, and I give him an A. And yet again here, huge credit has to go to Peter Cushing, who did such an amazing job with this character in a limited amount of screen time, to the point where many agree that this character truly represents the Empire, or at least what Palpatine's vision for the Empire was, because if the whole Empire had been as cutthroat and as ruthless as Tarkin, well, the Rebels would have never had a chance. And though other appearances of Tarkin maybe don't capture that exact same magic, they still do the character justice and expand his story. And no, he's not the greatest villain in all of Star Wars, but the funny thing is, that says more about the greatness of the other villains of Star Wars than it says about anything Tarkin was lacking as a character. Well, that's all I've got for you this time. Now it's your turn to tell me what you think about Tarkin, or what I or anyone else had to say about him in this video. You can also nominate or vote for which character we do next. Either way, do leave a comment below and let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.